Y'all, good morning. Welcome. We are Unboxed Advisors. We are doing a little Ask Me Anything this morning on our live stream. If you are new here, I'm Catherine and this is Susan Bryant. We work alongside small business owners in the world of strategic accounting, advanced tax planning, and holistic business advisory. We're all about providing the biggest impact to business owners in their business, in their household, and in their pocketbook. And this morning, we have a highly requested topic, Susan. We have heard this from a variety of different business owners in a variety of different stages in their entrepreneurial journey. And that is defined benefit plans. So we're going to spend the next few moments really tackling this topic because it's important. And I'll just go ahead and admit, I know the word defined benefit plan, but that's it. So I'm hoping that you can educate me specifically on this. So tell me everything I need to know, Susan, about defined benefit plans.
Yeah, this topic comes up a lot, especially for people who are high income earners and they are looking for opportunities to defer the taxation on the income that they're earning in hopes that their income will be lower in future periods. And this is sort of the whole notion of retirement planning in general, right? Like 401k plans, which often get paired with defined benefit plans. The theory is that I shield my income from taxation now. I kick the can down the road. Later, when I'm in a lower tax bracket, I start taking the money out. And so I am receiving the benefit of the deduction now, right? So I'm getting the tax arbitrage between receiving that deduction now and paying income tax later, as well as my money is growing tax-free. So that's sort of like the idea. But I'll kind of break down the mechanics of how it works. Most people are familiar with a distribution plan, which is the 401k. Every year, I'm allowed to contribute a defined amount to the 401k plan. So whether that's the maximum, like if you're over 50 this year, grand. So you have opportunity to put quite a bit of money in there. Mm-hmm. But you don't know into the future how much money you're going to get because the contribution is defined today. It could grow 5%. It could grow 1,000%. You don't know, but you do know what you're putting in today. So that's 401ks or defined contribution plans.
Okay.
A defined benefit plan is a little bit different. There is a actuarial calculation that is performed to determine what I need to put in today, or my employer is going to put in today. That's really how it works. My employer is going to put in today to yield me a defined benefit at my retirement. Defined benefit. So I may have to put in $100,000 today to yield a defined benefit that's equivalent to my income today in the future. So that's kind of a discounted cash flow methodology of understanding what do I have to put in order to yield the defined benefit into the future. That's kind of the idea. The cool thing about defined benefit plans is that it's an employer paid benefit. So if I own my own company, I pay myself very well, and I decide I want to set up a defined benefit plan, my company can make a very large contribution based upon my age and income and receive a deduction for that amount. So if you can imagine, that can be extremely substantial, upwards of $700,000 or more. I mean, and you have some flexibility in terms of what your income is and what that dollar amount needs to be. It takes into account what your expected retirement is, so your age, also the return on your investments. Like as you get this is starting to become a very sophisticated process. Mm-hmm. But each year, that is something that you are contributing to. Typically, defined benefit plans are funded for a minimum of 3 years, on average 5 years or more. There is a potential to really put some significant funds away up to up to the maximum contributions. But
Okay.
they,
I have a question. Can
okay.
you choose how much money goes into the defined benefit plan? Or is it like you set the amount and like that's what you're working for? Like how do you get to be the captain of your own ship there?
Yeah, so there's a couple of drivers to that. Income. So if your income goes up or down, there are the calculations would vary. Again, your investment performance. If your investments do well, it may limit the amount you can contribute in a year, or if they don't perform very well, you may have the opportunity to contribute more. You also have the opportunity to elect out of making a contribution. And maybe you just have a really bad business year, and you're like, I can't. I'm gonna have to put a freeze on this for this year. I just quit. That's a possibility. So there are some elements of flexibility in it, but there is a commitment to fund it for a minimum of 3, preferably 5 years.
Okay.
But it can be really, really powerful in deferring the income, especially when you're in that 37% marginal tax bracket. I mean, that's almost 40 cents on the dollar that you're gaining. And you're literally moving money from one pocket to another pocket and getting a deduction. So you keep all your own money. So it's a really powerful. It should be noted that defined benefit plans are what's referred to as a qualified plan. A qualified plan basically means that it is governed by the rules of ERISA, which is a federal law. That means that it has to be equitable for all of the employees of the company. So if you're the only employee or you and your spouse, no big deal. But if you have other people who work for you and are eligible to participate, you may have to share with them in terms of making a contribution to their defined benefit plan as well. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something you kind of have to know going into it. Like you have to quantify what that dollar amount looks like. Um, be a very powerful tool in retaining employees. I mean, because how many small businesses are you know, essentially a pension contribution for their employees, long-term employees? I mean, not very many. Do you think that person's going to want to leave your employment and go someplace else for some other marginal raise? No, they're gonna want to stay put. So it can be very, very powerful there, but it is important to know that there are situations where mathematically the contributions are going to have to be shared with other members of the team employees.
That'd be helpful if your children were some of those employees, right?
Sure, yeah, and I've even come across situations where like the owner was really young, but they had an employee who was much older.
Okay.
The math, it was like it's not going to be an effective strategy. The contribution would have to be too high for that older employee, and the younger employee, just the owner wouldn't benefit, even though their compensation was much higher.
Okay.
So, so at the beginning of this process, you have to go through what's essentially called a feasibility study. You're looking at the map, you're looking at the numbers, you're making some determinations as to whether or not this strategy, from a tax perspective and just a business strategy standpoint, whether it makes sense for you.
Okay. Awesome. The only thing that I didn't hear you talk about was Roth IRAs. We talked about 401k, but we didn't talk about Roth. So, like, where does that come into this soup of retirement?
Yeah, so really interesting thoughts around sort of Roth IRAs. So um, a defined benefit plan and a traditional 401k plan are all pre-tax dollars,
Okay.
right? So they've been withheld from your paycheck as a 401k employee referral, or an employer has made a contribution to your defined benefit plan. All of that is pre-tax dollars. So at some point in the future, when you retire and you're required to take it out, or you voluntarily take it out, you're going to pay tax on it at that point in time. That's just how it is.
Okay.
If you make a contribution today to either a Roth IRA, if you're allowed to, or a Roth portion of like a 401k, currently, the law says is that that money is going to grow tax free and you'll never pay tax on it again because you're using after tax dollars to make that retirement contribution today. You're still kicking into that long term bucket. It's growing tax free, but under the current tax laws, you'll never pay tax on it again when you take it out during retirement. That's the thought. Um, Typically, Roth IRAs, there are different ways that we work with financial advisors to determine what monies we have in what buckets. I mean, you can be weighted too much in the pre-tax bucket and not as much in the after-tax bucket. So there's some strategy in understanding where should I be putting my money and why, based on my future retirement funds and the diversification of those pools from a tax perspective. So it's not like a always put money in a Roth, always do pre-tax. It's such a specific determination individual. And also, it's something that we've got to really plan ahead of time and really strategize with a client's financial advisor. It's just a really big conversation to understand what else do they have going on. And a lot of times, just that. I mean, they've got investments in real estate, potentially other businesses. So there's all sorts of different variables that are happening. And then, you throw in like inheritances and, other things like that, that sort of like, okay, how does that change how I'm going to spend my retirement money if I just inherit a bunch of money from my parents, right? You're probably not even going to get around to spending your own. So how do we it's an inflection point of like, okay, how are we going to handle this? Okay. I still haven't answered your question
That's
about
okay.
Roth IRAs. Obviously, there's a lot to this. Roth IRAs are usually used for contributions for kids when we pay kids out of the owner's management fee. So, kind of here is the mechanic. So, I have a business. I pay a management fee to my Schedule C, and my kids work for me over there. I then do a W-2 for each of them. Maybe there's a couple of them, and it's under the standard deduction amount, so they don't have a filing requirement. But now they have earned income that now allows me as the parent to use those funds to set up a Roth IRA for them and to make essentially, I'm using pre-tax dollars to make an after-tax retirement contribution. So I'm not paying tax on that money, and they'll never pay tax on that money. I'm kicking it into a long-term bucket, essentially funding their retirement, after-tax retirement with pre-tax dollars.
Okay.
I can tell you that there's not a lot of opportunities under the tax code to do things quite like that. Okay. It is a very unique opportunity. A lot of people go wrong and they end up paying their kids out of like their S Corp or something. And that's really a waste because you end up paying Social Security and Medicare on it. So you got to do it in this order to be exempted from that when they're under 18. Mm-hmm. But if you can imagine spending $6,000 on your kid, putting that into a Roth IRA for, when they start working in your office, whatever age, or you're using their likeness on advertising or whatever, compensating them accordingly, $6,000 when they're, starting at a young age. I mean, that's life-changing amounts of dollars that could compound over 30, 40, 50 years. I mean, you're saving taxes in the process. It's pretty magical.
Yes. Okay. So speaking of magic, what is the magic point where I need to say, hey, my financial advisor, my CPA, I need to get you both in a room. I want to talk about a defined benefit plan. I'm ready. I think I'm there. What are those key characteristics of when you start that conversation for a business owner?
Man, I would say when you're starting to earn in your business upwards of, especially if you have a small group of people, like a small team, if you're starting to accumulate net income 250, 500K per year, that's the point at which you need to be saying, okay, I'd like to talk about this and understand a little bit more. Is there something I could or should be doing? Right. So that's really the point at which I would have that conversation. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the point at which I'm pulling that trigger or that lever, because I might be wanting to make other investments in my business depending on where I am in the maturity of my business. But that's a point in which I need to be informed about the possibilities that are in front of me, the things I could do, my options that are available. So a lot of tax planning has so much to do with education of the person who's going to end up making that decision. But many times they're just not getting educated. So they don't even know what possibilities exist. So they're really not doing anything. They're just kind of going along on autopilot, like I'm making money, this is great, not knowing that there are different levers that you can be pulling along the way to try to mitigate those taxes, shift money around, build wealth outside the business, those types of things.
And usually we see individuals start doing tax planning after they have already been slapped with a massive tax bill. So
Yeah.
what we call that at Unboxed Advisors paying the dumb tax. So don't pay the dumb tax. Do the YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn things for me. Stay in touch with us because we've got a lot of good information, a lot of great education. We're going to be bringing you more content like this. Susan, thank you for educating me on defined benefit plans. I feel so much better about my knowledge. Thank you. So, all right, y'all, we will be with you next week. Please do the things like our content, share it with friends, help the algorithm spread the word and the education all about defined benefit plans. This is really important stuff to tax planning. So, we will see you in the next one. Have a good one.